In this video, we're going to take a look at a basic at-home setup guide for your guitars that anyone can do, and they'll make your guitars play great. You should do a setup on your guitar periodically as environmental conditions change, every few months, or if the guitar just starts to feel different in your hands. What I'm going to show you here is a starting point that you can customize to your personal preferences. Now, this process is not original to me. It's largely based on methodologies used by companies like Sir and other manufacturers. And a final note is that this will not fix issues associated with poor fretwork or worn frets. You should always get those addressed first. There's a couple of basic tools that you'll need in order to do a really good at-home guitar setup. The first is a straight edge, and there's two varieties of this. The first is the one you see in the bottom, and it's a machine straight edge that's flat the whole way across. Above that is one that has notches for the frets, so you can put it directly on the fretboard. For our process, either one will do. Next, you're going to need a ruler that measures to 64ths, and you can get these on Amazon for about $10 or less. You'll also need some Allen wrenches and a screwdriver, and a great way to get all of this in one package is this Ibanez multi-tool. I personally like to use a headband magnifier as well, just so I can really see in on the measurements, but that's completely optional. The first step in setting up our guitar is to set the neck's relief. The relief is the bow that you'll find in the neck, and the goal is to get this as flat or almost as flat as possible. The more relief that's in your neck, the more string tension you're going to have, and that's why we're trying to get this fairly flat. To measure the neck's relief, we're first going to place a capo on the 1st fret. And then we're going to press down on the 17th fret. About halfway between the 1st and 17th fret in terms of distance is going to be the 7th fret, so we're going to press down on that to see how much distance there is from the underside of the string to the fret. The goal here is just to make sure there's some space and the string is not laying flat on the fret. Let's zoom in and take a closer look. My personal preference is to double check the relief by using a straight edge across the frets. Just make sure as you place the straight edge on the frets that you don't slam it down or drop it on it, because it will ding your frets. So place it down carefully. And then I also like to use my headband magnifier so I can look in closely at the distance. If your neck has a bow in it, you can address this by adjusting the truss rod. Turning the truss rod to the right will tighten the neck and will remove any bow, and turning it to the left will loosen the truss rod and remove any back bow. The second step is to set the bridge. This applies if you have a tremolo unit on your guitar. First, we want to lift the bridge slightly above the body, about 3/64 of an inch. To do this, take an Allen wrench to the bridge post and turn them until you get right about that height. Second, we want to make sure that the bridge is parallel with the body. If the bridge is angling down in the back, we'll need to loosen the screws in the tremolo cavity on the back of the guitar. And if it's angling up, we'll need to tighten those screws so there's more tension on the bridge. Third, after we've set the height of the bridge and made it parallel to the body, we want to double check the strings to make sure they have a clean break angle on the saddles. We don't want the saddles angling down in the front. Having a clean break angle will help with the sustain of your guitar. If you find that the saddles are angling down, that's an indication that you might need to lower the bridge. The third step is to set the guitar's action. The action is that gap between the strings and the frets. This ultimately comes down to personal preference and feel, but I'm going to give you some tips for getting started. A great starting point is for the strings to be about 4/64 above the fret. You can use a small ruler like this one that measures down to 64ths, and this is why I also like to use that headband magnifier as well. And you can see we're right about in that range, maybe just a little bit under. Now, a little bit of fret buzz is okay, as long as you don't hear it through an amp and you're not getting fret out when you bend around the 15th fret. Again, setting your action ultimately comes down to preference and feel, as it becomes a compromise between how easy you want the guitar to play versus how cleanly you want the notes to ring out without any fret buzz. Our fourth step is to set the pickup's height. Ultimately, our goal here is to get a good, strong signal from the strings, but not have so much of a magnetic pull on the strings that it's affecting your sustain. To measure the pickup's height, we'll first press down at the last fret before measuring. Here are some basic starting points you can use for single coils and humbuckers. For single coils, the low E string is typically set around 8/64, while the high E string is set around 6/64. For a neck humbucker, a good starting point is right around 7/64 on the low E and about 6/64 on the high E. And for a bridge humbucker, you can go a little bit higher with 6/64 on the low E and 5/64 on the high E. Ultimately, though, set your pickup height based on the sound that you hear in your head and how you want your guitar to feel. As pickups get closer to the strings, the output tends to be hotter, can start to become compressed. So again, balance this out with what you're hearing in your head. The final step is to set the guitar's intonation. Intonation is making sure that your notes stay in tune across the neck. To set the guitar's intonation, we're going to compare a natural harmonic at the 12th fret with a fretted note at the 12th fret. To start, make sure your guitar is in tune. Play the 12th fret harmonic, and then fret the note and see if it's sharper or flatter than that harmonic. If the fretted note is sharper, you'll need to lengthen the string, and we do that by moving the saddle back with a screwdriver. If the fretted note is flatter, you'll need to shorten the string by turning the saddle screw in the opposite direction. This is how I set up all of my guitars. I hope you found this video helpful. If you've never set up a guitar before, it's really not that hard. Anyone can do it as long as you have a little bit of patience and some of the basic tools mentioned in this video.